Rain slid down the bus window in crooked silver lines as Ethan Brooks pressed his forehead lightly against the cold glass and watched downtown Portland blur into watercolor lights. The city looked softer in the evening, quieter somehow, like everything sharp had been washed away by the storm. His backpack sat between his sneakers, one strap twisted around the leg of his chair, while 3 small houseplants trembled carefully inside a cardboard box balanced on his lap. The driver announced the next stop with tired boredom. Ethan inhaled slowly. New apartment. New roommate. New start. That was the idea anyway. He adjusted the sleeve of his damp hoodie and checked his phone again even though there were no new messages. The moving company had cancelled 6 hours ago. His older brother had forgotten to call back. And somewhere in the middle of hauling his entire life through Union Station alone, Ethan had managed to lose one sneaker for almost 20 minutes inside a coffee shop bathroom. It already felt like Portland was making fun of him personally. The bus hissed to a stop beside a narrow brick building glowing with warm yellow light. Beneath the apartment sat a tiny bakery with fogged-up windows and a flickering sign that read Marigold Bakery in curly gold letters. The smell hit him before he even stepped off the bus. Cinnamon. Butter. Fresh bread. The kind of smell that made lonely people feel worse somehow. Ethan climbed down carefully, nearly slipping on the wet curb while protecting the plants like they were emotional support animals. Rain tapped steadily against his shoulders as he looked up toward the apartment windows above the bakery. One of them glowed amber against the dark sky. Home, supposedly. He shifted the box against his chest and muttered, "Please let this roommate not be weird." The front hallway smelled like old wood, vanilla candles, and rain-soaked coats. Somewhere downstairs, soft jazz drifted up from the bakery speakers. Ethan climbed the narrow staircase one careful step at a time, balancing a duffel bag over one shoulder and a frying pan awkwardly under his arm because apparently that was the one kitchen item he owned now. Halfway up the stairs, his sneakers squeaked loudly against the wood. Then a door opened upstairs. Ethan froze instantly. A tall blonde guy stepped into the hallway wearing a faded green sweatshirt and gray sweatpants, holding what looked like a dish towel over one shoulder. For a second, neither of them spoke. The hallway light painted warm gold across the stranger's face, softening sharp cheekbones and sleepy blue eyes. He looked annoyingly calm. Like the human version of a warm lamp in a bookstore. Ethan suddenly became deeply aware that he was standing in a stairwell clutching a frying pan and dripping rainwater onto his own plants. Great! Fantastic first impression. The guy blinked once before his mouth curved into the faintest smile. "You are Ethan, right?" His voice was low and warm, rough around the edges in a way that sounded unfairly comforting. Ethan adjusted the box awkwardly. Yeah. The guy glanced down at the overloaded mess in Ethan's arms. The new roommate with 3 plants and 1 frying pan? Ethan looked down slowly at himself. Silence stretched for exactly 1 second too long. Then Noah Carter laughed quietly under his breath. Not mean. Not mocking. Just soft amusement that somehow made Ethan more embarrassed. "Okay," Ethan muttered, climbing the last step. "In my defense, I own more than 1 pan. I just packed terribly." "That actually makes it worse," Noah replied. Ethan let out an involuntary laugh before he could stop himself. Rain rattled softly against the hallway window beside them while warm bakery light spilled through the stairwell below, wrapping everything in gold. Noah stepped forward without hesitation and reached for the heavier box balanced against Ethan's chest. "Here," he said simply. "You are going to drop those." Ethan instinctively tightened his grip. "I am completely capable of carrying my own stuff." Right on cue, the frying pan slipped from under his arm and clanged loudly against the staircase railing. Noah stared at him. Ethan stared back in exhausted defeat. "Okay," Ethan sighed. "Maybe not emotionally capable." Noah's laugh came easier this time. He picked up the frying pan first, then carefully took the plant box from Ethan's arms like it weighed nothing at all. Together they walked down the narrow hallway toward apartment 4B while Rain whispered against the windows outside. Ethan followed a step behind, suddenly hyper-aware of everything. The warmth of the hallway lights. The smell of sugar drifting upstairs from the bakery ovens. The soft fabric of Noah's sweatshirt brushing against the cardboard box. It had been a long time since someplace unfamiliar felt calm instead of awkward. Noah nudged the apartment door open with his shoulder. "Welcome home," he said casually. The words landed strangely somewhere deep in Ethan's chest before he could explain why. Portland smelled like wet pavement and sugar the next morning. Pale gray clouds drifted lazily above the city while soft rain tapped against the bakery windows downstairs in uneven rhythms. Ethan stood in the tiny apartment kitchen wearing mismatched socks and staring at the unfamiliar coffee machine like it had personally insulted him. The apartment itself was warmer in daylight. Small. Cozy. Quiet in a way that almost felt dangerous. Golden morning light slipped through thin curtains beside the sink, catching dust in the air like floating glitter. Somewhere downstairs, trays clattered softly while the bakery opened for the morning rush. Noah leaned casually against the counter across from him, half awake, scrolling through his phone while waiting for toast. He looked annoyingly comfortable for someone who had known Ethan less than 12 hours. Ethan still felt like a guest inside his own skin. "So," Noah said lightly, glancing up. "You survived your first night in apartment 4B. Ethan opened the wrong cabinet for the third time. "Barely." Noah smiled into his coffee mug. "You talked in your sleep once." Ethan froze. "What?" "You said," Noah paused dramatically, "please do not let the ducks drive the bus." Ethan stared at him in horror. Noah's shoulders shook slightly with contained laughter. "You are lying." "Probably." Ethan narrowed his eyes suspiciously while Noah finally grinned openly over the rim of his mug. It was unfair how much warmer the apartment suddenly felt when he smiled like that. Ethan turned away. Too quickly and grabbed his backpack off the chair. "I need coffee that comes from professionals," he muttered. 20 minutes later they stepped downstairs into Marigold Bakery while soft indie music floated through the warm crowded space. The smell hit Ethan immediately. Cinnamon rolls. Fresh espresso. Melted butter. The bakery looked like something from a movie about people with healthy emotional coping mechanisms. Tiny string lights wrapped around wooden shelves lined with pastries while rain fogged the front windows facing the street. Most of the tables were already occupied by sleepy Portland locals hiding from the weather with laptops and oversized sweaters. Behind the register stood Mrs. Alvarez, the bakery owner. She looked somewhere around 70, wore giant sunflower earrings, and had the terrifyingly observant energy of someone who noticed absolutely everything. The moment Noah walked in, her entire face brightened. "Noah," she called warmly. Then her eyes shifted immediately toward Ethan beside him. Ethan suddenly felt like a nervous rescue dog at a family barbecue. Mrs. Alvarez leaned both elbows onto the counter dramatically. "And who is this?" Noah stepped forward calmly. "This is Ethan. My new roommate." Mrs. Alvarez gasped softly like he had just announced an engagement. "Oh, finally." Ethan blinked. Noah looked mildly exhausted already. "Mrs. Alvarez," he warned gently. "What?" she said innocently. "I am just saying. The apartment upstairs has needed better energy for years." Her eyes flicked between them once more before her smile widened knowingly. "You boys look cute together." Ethan nearly inhaled his own tongue. "What?" he squeaked. Noah calmly reached for 2 menus while Ethan internally dissolved into static. Mrs. Alvarez tilted her head. "Do not worry, honey. I knew after the matching rain jackets." Ethan looked down immediately. They were both wearing dark green jackets. Silence. Noah bit the inside of his cheek hard enough to stop himself from laughing. Ethan pointed wildly between them. "For the record," he blurted too loudly, "I am straight. People just say weird stuff when two guys live together." A nearby customer glanced up. From her laptop. Somewhere behind the espresso machine, somebody snorted quietly. Noah slowly lowered his coffee menu with the expression of a man witnessing a small controlled explosion. Mrs. Alvarez blinked once. Then twice. Okay, she said carefully, like speaking to a startled deer. I only asked if you wanted blueberry muffins. Ethan felt heat crawl all the way up his neck. Right. Cool. Great. Fantastic. He reached automatically toward the pastry tray beside the register at the exact moment his sleeve caught the edge of it. Time slowed instantly. Noah's eyes widened. Mrs. Alvarez gasped. Ethan watched in absolute horror as an entire tray of mini muffins tilted sideways toward the floor. No, Ethan lunged forward awkwardly, catching half the tray against his chest while 3 muffins bounced dramatically onto the tile floor like tiny blueberry grenades. The bakery went silent for one painful second. Then Noah burst into laughter. Real laughter this time. Warm and helpless and impossible to ignore. Ethan stood frozen in the middle of the bakery clutching a crooked tray of muffins while rain tapped softly against the windows behind him. Mrs. Alvarez pressed one hand dramatically over her heart. Oh, he is nervous. Ethan wanted the earth to open beneath him immediately. Instead, Noah stepped beside him, still laughing quietly under his breath as he reached down to pick up the fallen muffins. You okay there, straight guy? Noah asked gently. Ethan looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time that morning. The soft crinkles beside his eyes. The warmth behind the teasing. The easy way he stood close without making Ethan feel trapped. Something uncomfortable twisted lightly in Ethan's chest before he shoved the feeling away too fast. Outside, rain streaked silver down the bakery windows while thunder rumbled softly somewhere over the city. And for reasons he could not explain yet, Ethan suddenly had the strange, terrifying feeling that moving into this apartment might change everything. Rain continued across Portland for 3 straight days after the bakery incident. The city looked permanently wrapped in silver mist while headlights smeared across wet streets below the apartment windows like melted paint. Ethan had started settling into routines without meaning to. Noah left jazz playing softly in the kitchen every morning before work. Mrs. Alvarez sent free pastries upstairs whenever the bakery accidentally made too many cinnamon rolls, which somehow happened daily. And every evening around 6:30, Noah returned home smelling faintly like coffee, rain, and chalk dust from the elementary school music room. Ethan noticed all of it against his will. Which was annoying. Deeply annoying. Tuesday night arrived cold and windy. The storm outside rattled tree branches against the apartment building while rain tapped steadily across the windows like restless fingers. Ethan sat cross-legged on the living room floor surrounded by unfinished freelance design work, 3 empty soda cans, and 1 aggressively dying fern. His laptop glowed pale blue against the dark apartment while Noah stood in the kitchen heating leftover tomato soup. Your plant looks judgmental, Noah called casually. Ethan glanced at the fern. His name is Gregory and he has been through a lot. Noah laughed softly under his breath. Ethan tried not to notice how much he liked that sound now. Which was becoming a problem. A weird tiny domestic problem. The kind that sneaks up quietly before ruining your emotional stability. By 11:30 the storm had intensified. Wind howled softly around the corners of the building while distant thunder rolled over the city. Noah had already gone to bed after reminding Ethan at least twice not to stay awake until 3 in the morning working. Ethan ignored him professionally. Around 1:15, exhaustion finally won. Ethan shut his laptop, stumbled toward his bedroom, and collapsed face-first onto the mattress without even changing clothes. The apartment fell quiet except for rain and distant traffic below the windows. Somewhere in the dark, the old building creaked softly like it was settling deeper into sleep. Then 3:17 in the morning arrived. Noah woke slowly to the sound of cabinet doors opening downstairs. At first he thought the storm had knocked something loose. He blinked blearily at the dark ceiling while another soft clatter echoed through the apartment. Glass against marble. A drawer sliding open. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow. Uneven. Noah sat up immediately. The digital clock beside his bed glowed 3:17 a.m. in dim red numbers. Another sound drifted faintly from the kitchen. A spoon dropping onto the counter. Noah rubbed one hand over his face and climbed out of bed wearing nothing but gray sweatpants and an old college sweatshirt. The apartment hallway felt cold against his bare feet as he moved quietly toward the kitchen. The overhead stove light was on. Ethan stood in front of the refrigerator completely motionless. Noah stopped in the doorway. Ethan looked half awake at best. His blonde hair stuck out wildly in every direction while his oversized hoodie hung crooked off one shoulder. He was holding a cereal box in one hand and an entire gallon of orange juice in the other with terrifying confidence. Noah blinked once slowly. Ethan calmly poured orange juice directly into a bowl of cereal. Then he stared at it like this made perfect sense. Noah pressed his lips together hard to stop himself from laughing. "Why were you making cereal at 3 in the morning, with orange juice?" he asked carefully. Ethan did not react. Which somehow made the situation worse. The apartment hummed softly around them while rain streaked silver across the dark kitchen windows. Ethan blinked slowly at the counter before wandering sideways toward the coffee machine with the focus of a man on an important mission. Noah watched in fascinated confusion as Ethan opened the refrigerator again, grabbed a carton of blueberries, and carefully dropped 3 of them into an empty coffee mug. One at a time. Plop. 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 Then Ethan nodded slightly to himself like he had solved world hunger. Noah stared openly now. "Okay," he whispered. "Either you are sleepwalking or Portland finally broke you." Ethan shuffled past him silently with slow careful steps, still half asleep. Noah moved aside automatically while Ethan wandered into the hallway without even looking up. His eyes remained barely open the entire time. "Ethan?" Noah called softly. No response. Ethan disappeared into his bedroom before the door clicked shut behind him. Silence settled across the apartment again. Noah stood alone in the kitchen surrounded by orange juice cereal and unexplained blueberries while thunder rolled quietly outside. A laugh escaped him before he could stop it. Warm. Surprised. Fond in a way he was absolutely not prepared to examine at nearly 4 in the morning. He looked down at the abandoned cereal bowl again. Then toward Ethan's closed bedroom door. Something softened unexpectedly in his chest. The realization unsettled him more than it should have. The next morning sunlight filtered weakly through rain clouds while Ethan shuffled sleepily into the kitchen wearing mismatched socks again. He froze instantly. Noah sat at the counter drinking coffee beside a neatly arranged bowl of cereal. With orange juice. Ethan frowned slowly. Why does the kitchen smell weird? Noah lowered his mug carefully. Question, he said. Do you normally black out and commit breakfast crimes in the middle of the night? Ethan blinked. What? Noah slid the bowl slightly across the counter. Ethan stared at it in visible horror. Then his eyes moved toward the coffee mug sitting beside it. 3 blueberries floated inside. Silence. Noah watched confusion spread slowly across Ethan's face. Real confusion. Not embarrassment. Not denial. Something else. Something uncertain. Ethan looked back up carefully. I did not make that. Noah's teasing expression faded just slightly. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows while the apartment suddenly felt smaller somehow. Quieter. Stranger. And neither of them noticed the hallway closet door standing slightly open behind them even though both of them clearly remembered closing it before bed. The apartment felt different after the cereal incident. Not dangerous. Not dramatic. Just quietly off balance in a way Ethan could not explain. Like walking into a room and realizing someone had moved all the furniture half an inch to the left. Thursday arrived wrapped in low gray clouds and steady rain again. Portland's sidewalks shimmered beneath traffic lights while cold wind pushed fallen leaves into swirling corners. Along the streets downtown. Ethan spent most of the afternoon pretending to work inside a crowded cafe 3 blocks away from the apartment because apparently avoiding eye contact with his own roommate had become part of his personality now. His laptop sat open in front of him, displaying the same unfinished logo design for nearly 40 minutes while soft acoustic music drifted through the cafe speakers. Around him, people typed quietly, stirred coffee, and lived emotionally stable lives. Ethan envied them deeply. He rubbed both hands over his face and glanced toward his phone again. One unread text from Noah sat at the top of the screen. Noah, Mrs. Alvarez sent upstairs 3 lemon pastries. Please come save me from eating all of them. Ethan stared at the message too long. The annoying part was that he could practically hear Noah's voice saying it. Calm. Warm. Lightly teasing. Everything about that man felt unfairly comfortable now. Which made absolutely no sense. They had known each other for barely a week. A week. That was nothing. And yet Ethan already knew Noah hummed softly while washing dishes. He knew Noah hated grapefruit juice but loved terrible science fiction movies from the 1990s. He knew Noah always left one kitchen light on before bed because complete darkness made the apartment feel lonely. Ethan shut his laptop harder than necessary. You okay over there? Asked the barista behind the counter. Her name tag read Cassie in crooked black marker. Ethan looked up too quickly. What? Cassie pointed vaguely toward him with a cinnamon scone. You have been staring at your coffee like it personally betrayed you. Ethan sighed. Long week. Relationship problems? She asked casually. Ethan nearly choked on air. No, too fast. Cassie raised one eyebrow slowly. Ethan pointed at himself awkwardly. I have a roommate. Cassie nodded immediately, like this explained everything. Ah. Ethan frowned. Why does everybody say ah like that? Cassie only smiled mysteriously before walking away. Ethan groaned softly and leaned his forehead against the table. By the time he returned to the apartment that evening, rain hammered steadily against the windows, while thunder rolled somewhere over the river. Warm yellow light spilled from beneath the apartment door upstairs. Ethan stepped inside quietly, shrugging off his soaked jacket. The apartment smelled like tomato soup and fresh bread. Noah stood near the stove stirring something slowly while jazz crackled softly from the old radio beside him. Domestic. The entire scene looked painfully domestic. Noah glanced up immediately. Hey. Ethan tried very hard not to smile back automatically. Hey. Silence settled for a moment while rain whispered against the windows. Then Noah tilted his head slightly. You disappeared all day. Ethan tossed his keys onto the counter. Busy. Noah looked unconvinced but let it go. There is soup. Ethan mumbled something appreciative and wandered toward his bedroom. Halfway down the hallway he stopped suddenly. The hallway closet door stood open again. Ethan frowned slowly. Did you leave this open? Noah glanced over from the kitchen. No. Ethan stared at the closet. A strange chill crept lightly across the back of his neck. Okay. Seriously. I swear that thing keeps opening by itself. Noah laughed softly. Congratulations. Your first haunted apartment. Ethan rolled his eyes but closed the closet firmly anyway. Later that night the storm worsened. Wind rattled against the old building while distant sirens echoed faintly through downtown Portland. Around 2:30 in the morning Noah woke again. Another sound. Soft footsteps. The apartment glowed dimly blue beneath streetlight reflections sliding through rain-covered windows. Noah sat up slowly and listened. Footsteps crossed the living room. Pause. Then silence. He climbed quietly from bed and followed the sound into the hallway. Ethan sat curled beside the large living room window wrapped in a blanket he clearly did not remember grabbing. His head rested lightly against the wall while rainwater shimmered silver beyond the glass. The city outside looked blurred and dreamlike beneath the storm. Ethan's eyes remained closed. Asleep. Noah stopped moving immediately. Something tightened unexpectedly in his chest. Ethan looked strangely younger like this. Softer somehow. Like all the nervous energy disappeared once he stopped trying so hard to protect himself from everything. Noah stepped closer carefully. Ethan stirred faintly against the wall and mumbled something unintelligible under his breath. Noah crouched beside him. Ethan? No response. Just slow sleepy breathing and rain tapping gently against the windows beside them. Noah exhaled quietly through his nose. Then his eyes landed on the blanket half slipping from Ethan's shoulder. Without thinking, Noah reached down and carefully pulled the blanket higher around him. His fingers brushed lightly against Ethan's sleeve for barely half a second. Warm. Noah froze instantly afterward. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet. Too small. Ethan shifted slightly in his sleep, leaning unconsciously closer toward the warmth beside him before settling again. Noah's heartbeat stumbled once hard against his ribs. He stared at Ethan for one dangerous second too long before standing abruptly and stepping back. Absolutely not. No. He was not doing this. Ethan was his awkward disaster roommate with sleepwalking problems and emotional support plants. That was all. Noah rubbed one hand over the back of his neck and forced himself toward the kitchen. Behind him, rain streaked softly across the living room windows while Ethan slept peacefully beside the glass. The next morning, pale sunlight finally broke through the clouds for the first time all week. Ethan wandered sleepily into the kitchen and stopped immediately when he noticed the blanket folded neatly beside the couch. His brow furrowed. Then his eyes shifted slowly toward the window. Silence. Noah looked up from making coffee. Ethan frowned harder. I swear I went to bed in my room. Why do I keep waking up near the window? Noah's fingers tightened slightly around his coffee mug. Ethan looked genuinely unsettled now. Confused in a way that no longer seemed funny. Outside, weak morning sunlight shimmered across wet Portland streets while the apartment remained wrapped in strange heavy quiet. Then Ethan noticed something else. Muddy footprints. Small faint ones leading from the hallway toward the living room window. His expression changed immediately. Noah, he said slowly. Tell me those are not mine. The muddy footprints disappeared by noon. Which honestly made the entire situation worse. Ethan had spent 20 straight minutes comparing the size of his sneakers to the faint marks near the living room window while Noah leaned against the kitchen counter pretending not to smile. The problem was the footprints did not fully match either pair of shoes in the apartment. They looked smaller somehow. Smudged around the edges by rainwater and old hardwood floors. Mrs. Alvarez blamed ghosts with tiny feet when Noah casually mentioned it downstairs later that afternoon. Ethan did not laugh. By Friday evening the storm finally broke. Portland glowed soft in gold beneath clear skies for the first time in days while sunset reflected off puddles across the sidewalks downtown. The entire city seemed relieved. Windows opened. Music drifted from restaurants onto crowded streets. Somewhere below the apartment, someone played acoustic guitar badly but enthusiastically. Ethan sat cross-legged on the living room rug helping Noah organize old DVDs into categories because apparently this was his life now. Why do you own 6 different shark movies? Ethan asked, horrified. Noah looked genuinely offended from the couch. They are classics. One of these is called Shark Volcano. And? Ethan held the DVD up slowly. That is not even how geography works. Noah grinned lazily without looking up from the stack in his lap. Sunlight spilled warm amber through the apartment windows, catching dust and softening everything it touched. Ethan hated how peaceful the apartment felt lately. Peaceful was dangerous. Peaceful made people comfortable. Comfortable made people emotionally stupid. Which was exactly why Ethan found himself noticing things he absolutely should not notice. The way Noah tucked one leg beneath himself while reading. The tiny scar near his jawline. The sleepy softness in his eyes whenever he laughed too hard. Ethan shoved another DVD aggressively into the wrong pile. You are overthinking again, Noah said casually. Ethan looked up too quickly. What? Noah pointed lazily toward him. You organize movies violently. When you are stressed. Ethan stared. That is not a real thing. You alphabetized Finding Nemo under emotional devastation yesterday. Ethan opened his mouth. Closed it again. Unfortunately, Noah was correct. Around 8:30, Mrs. Alvarez knocked upstairs carrying a tray of still warm chocolate croissants balanced against one hip. Movie night emergency supplies, she announced dramatically. Ethan moved aside while Noah laughed softly behind him. Mrs. Alvarez stepped into the apartment and immediately narrowed her eyes at both of them suspiciously. You boys look cozy. Ethan nearly walked directly into the kitchen island. Noah coughed into his sleeve to hide another smile. We are literally sorting movies, Ethan protested. Mrs. Alvarez said with terrifying confidence. That is how it starts. Then she wandered back downstairs before Ethan could recover emotionally. The evening settled slowly around them afterward. City lights flickered alive beyond the apartment windows while cool spring air drifted softly through the cracked balcony door. Eventually, Noah convinced Ethan to watch one of the terrible shark movies ironically. 2 hours later, Ethan found himself fully invested in whether the fictional mayor would survive the lava tsunami, which felt humiliating on multiple levels. By midnight, the apartment glowed dimly beneath string lights and television reflections. Empty pastry plates sat forgotten across the coffee table while blankets and pillows slowly migrated from opposite sides of the room into one chaotic nest across the couch. Ethan blamed the cold. Noah blamed nothing at all. Somewhere during the second movie, Ethan stretched briefly beneath the blanket and accidentally brushed shoulders with Noah. Warmth sparked lightly through him before he jerked back too fast. Noah glanced sideways at him but said nothing. The silence afterward felt strangely louder than the television. Around 1:30 in the morning, exhaustion finally settled heavily across the apartment. Ethan barely remembered pulling another blanket over his legs before the movie soundtrack blurred into background noise. Outside, Portland hummed quietly beneath pale moonlight and damp streets. The old apartment building creaked softly around them while traffic lights flickered red and gold below the bakery windows. Then morning arrived, bright and embarrassingly warm. Ethan woke slowly beneath a mountain of blankets with sunlight directly in his eyes and immediate confusion in his bloodstream. Something soft pressed against his shoulder. His brain loaded the information painfully 1 second at a time. Couch. Blanket. Television still running silently. Noah. Ethan froze instantly. Noah slept beside him with one arm trapped awkwardly beneath a pillow and blonde hair falling messily across his forehead. The couch looked like it had survived a small blanket-related natural disaster. Ethan stared down in horror. Somehow during the night he had stolen nearly every pillow in the apartment. One sat beneath his arm. Another behind his back. One suspiciously balanced against his chest like emotional armor. Silence stretched. Ethan carefully attempted to move without waking Noah. The blanket immediately tangled around his legs and nearly launched him off the couch. Noah stirred beside him with a sleepy groan before blinking slowly awake. For one terrifying second, their faces ended up much closer than Ethan emotionally had clearance for. Noah blinked once. Then twice. Then his mouth twitched slightly. You fell asleep during the movie, and somehow stole all the pillows. Ethan looked down at the disaster scene around them and felt his soul leave his body. I can explain. Noah glanced at the pillow trapped beneath Ethan's arm. Can you? Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Noah finally laughed softly under his breath while sunlight spilled gold across the living room floor around them. Ethan hated how nice the moment felt. Hated it. Which was exactly why panic arrived immediately afterward. He sat up too fast, accidentally knocking one pillow directly onto Noah's face. Sorry, Ethan blurted while grabbing the blanket and nearly tangling himself again. Noah pulled the pillow away, laughing openly now. Relax. It is just a couch. Ethan forced an awkward laugh, but his heartbeat refused to calm down. Because the problem was not the couch. The problem was how natural this had started feeling. Too natural. Too easy. And somewhere beneath the leftover movie noise and warm sunlight, Ethan realized with growing horror that for the first time in years he had slept through an entire night without waking up once. Saturday morning arrived bright and cold beneath pale blue Portland skies. Sunlight poured through the apartment windows for the first time all week, turning the hardwood floors warm gold while soft traffic noise drifted up from the street below. Ethan stood alone in the kitchen staring aggressively into a toaster like it had ruined his life. Which honestly felt emotionally accurate. He had slept on the couch with Noah. Accidentally. Fine. Whatever. Normal roommate behavior probably. People shared couches all the time. Entire sitcoms had been built around couches. The problem was not the couch itself. The problem was waking up feeling weirdly calm beside someone for the first time in years. Ethan hated examining that thought too closely. Behind him, Noah wandered sleepily into the kitchen wearing a navy hoodie and carrying one of Ethan's emotional support plants for absolutely no reason. Gregory needed sunlight, Noah explained before Ethan could ask. Ethan blinked at the fern. You named my plant correctly. I listen when people talk. Ethan immediately looked back at the toaster because that answer felt way too personal for 9 in the morning. Noah leaned casually against the counter. Mrs. Alvarez asked if we wanted coffee downstairs later. Ethan groaned immediately. That woman thinks we are married. Noah shrugged lightly. Free pastries are free pastries. 20 minutes later they stepped outside into crisp spring air while Portland bustled softly around them. Weekend crowds moved through downtown carrying shopping bags and paper coffee cups while bicycles rattled past damp sidewalks left over from yesterday's rain. Marigold Bakery glowed warm beneath the apartment building, already crowded with customers escaping the chilly morning breeze. The second they walked inside, Ethan felt trouble waiting for him spiritually. The cafe buzzed with soft conversation and espresso machines while sunlight streamed through fogged front windows. Cassie worked behind the register again, her dark curls tied messily above one eyebrow while she balanced 3 drink orders at once. The moment she spotted Noah and Ethan together, her expression shifted into immediate dangerous amusement. Ethan saw it happen in real time and considered leaving the country. Noah stepped calmly toward the counter beside him. Morning, Cass. Cassie pointed dramatically toward the pastry display before Noah could finish speaking. Your boyfriend wants extra cinnamon on his latte. Ethan short-circuited instantly. I am not too late. Noah had already accepted both coffee cups without hesitation while Cassie grinned like an evil genius. Ethan turned bright red so fast it honestly felt medically impressive. Cassie, he sputtered. Why does everyone keep doing this? Doing what? She asked innocently while sliding blueberry muffins into a paper bag. Observing things with my eyes? Noah coughed suspiciously into his sleeve to hide laughter again. Ethan pointed accusingly toward him. And you? Stop encouraging them. Noah looked genuinely confused. I said thank you for coffee. Exactly. That is how coffee shops work, Ethan. An older man seated nearby lowered his newspaper just enough to smile at both of them knowingly before returning to his crossword puzzle. Ethan wanted to dissolve directly into the floorboards. Cassie leaned both elbows onto the counter dramatically. You know, she said thoughtfully, you two already have old married couple energy. Noah accepted the muffin bag calmly. Do we at least seem emotionally functional? Absolutely not, Cassie answered immediately. Ethan covered his face with both hands. Noah laughed softly beside him and somehow that made everything worse. Because the sound wrapped around Ethan's nervous system too easily now. Warm. Familiar. Dangerous. They carried their drinks toward the corner table near the bakery windows while sunlight spilled across polished wood surfaces around them. Outside, Portland moved slowly beneath pale spring skies. People walked dogs. Cyclists coasted through intersections. Somewhere nearby a street musician played soft guitar badly but earnestly. Ethan sat across from Noah and immediately stole half a blueberry muffin out of stress. Noah watched him quietly over the rim of his coffee cup. You know, Noah said carefully, you do not always have to panic every time someone jokes about us. Ethan nearly inhaled cinnamon. There is no us. Noah's expression shifted slightly. Not hurt exactly. Just quieter. Ethan noticed immediately and hated himself on impact. That came out wrong, he muttered quickly. Noah looked down at his latte. It is fine. Silence settled briefly between them while soft jazz drifted through the cafe speakers overhead. Ethan stared at the window beside their table, watching sunlight shimmer across passing cars outside. He rubbed one hand awkwardly against the back of his neck. I just mean, he paused. Great. Fantastic. His brain had abandoned him mid-sentence. Noah waited patiently anyway. Which somehow made Ethan more nervous. People assume things, Ethan finally said softly. And I do not really know what to do with that sometimes. Noah studied him quietly for one long second. Then his expression softened just slightly. You know, he said gently, nobody is asking you to. Ethan looked up automatically. Their eyes met across the tiny bakery table while morning sunlight poured warm gold around them. For one dangerous heartbeat, the entire cafe seemed to blur softly at the edges. Then Cassie shouted from behind the counter, Noah, your boyfriend forgot his muffin. Ethan dropped his spoon directly into his coffee. After the bakery disaster, Ethan avoided eye contact with Noah for approximately 6 straight hours. Which was difficult when you lived in a 700-square-foot apartment with exactly one bathroom and emotionally aggressive lighting. Sunday evening settled quietly across Portland beneath pale gray skies and light spring drizzle. The city outside looked blurred and sleepy while soft rain ticked against the apartment windows in uneven rhythms. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor beside the couch pretending to work on client revisions while Noah graded elementary school music assignments at the kitchen table nearby. The apartment hummed softly with low jazz and the occasional sound of passing traffic below the bakery windows. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, Ethan felt like his nervous system had been replaced with exposed electrical wires. Every tiny interaction suddenly mattered too much. Noah asking if he wanted tea. Noah handing him the television remote. Noah laughing softly at one of Gregory the Fern's dramatically dying leaves. Ethan hated all of it. Around 8:30 his phone buzzed sharply against the coffee table. Moam flashed across the screen. Ethan's stomach tightened instantly. Noah glanced up briefly from the kitchen table. Everything okay? Ethan grabbed the phone too fast. Yeah. Lie. Noah clearly noticed but looked back down at his papers anyway. Ethan stepped out onto the tiny apartment balcony before answering. Cold damp air wrapped around him immediately while rain mist drifted through the narrow alley below. Hey, Ethan said quietly. His mother's voice arrived already tense. You forgot your cousin's birthday dinner again. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Mom, I texted her. A text is not the same thing as showing up. Here we go. Portland glowed silver around him while distant headlights reflected off wet streets below. Ethan leaned both elbows onto the balcony railing and stared down at the bakery sign flickering softly beneath him. I have work, he muttered. You always have work lately. Silence stretched heavily across the line. Then came the real part. The dangerous part. Your brother says you barely call anymore. Ethan rubbed one hand over his face tiredly. I have just been busy adjusting. Adjusting to what? His mother asked sharply. Living with some stranger? Ethan glanced instinctively back through the apartment window. Noah sat inside beneath warm kitchen light, focused quietly on grading papers with reading glasses sliding slightly down his nose. Something unexpectedly soft pulled through Ethan's chest before he looked away too fast. He is not a stranger, Ethan said without thinking. Silence. His mother noticed immediately. Mothers always noticed everything dangerous. Oh, she said carefully. Ethan straightened instantly. No. Not. Oh. I did not say anything. You implied something. Ethan. He exhaled hard through his nose while rain drifted cold against his sleeves. I have to go. You only call when you are lonely, his mother said quietly before he could hang up. Ethan froze. Her voice softened slightly afterward. And lately you sound less lonely. The line disconnected before Ethan could answer. He stood motionless on the balcony for several seconds afterward while rain whispered softly around him. Inside the apartment, Noah looked up once through the window. Their eyes met briefly. Ethan looked away first. Later that night the apartment settled into exhausted quiet. Rain continued lightly outside while distant thunder rolled somewhere over the river. Noah stayed awake in the living room grading papers beside a small lamp while Ethan retreated early to his bedroom claiming a headache he absolutely invented. Around 1 a.m, Noah finally noticed it again. Footsteps. Slow, soft ones crossing the hallway. He lowered his red grading pen immediately. The apartment glowed dimly beneath scattered city lights filtering through rain-covered windows. Noah remained very still as Ethan wandered quietly from the hallway into the living room wearing an oversized sweatshirt and mismatched socks again. His eyes stayed half closed. Sleepwalking. Noah watched carefully this time. Ethan paused near the couch first. Then near the kitchen doorway. Then finally drifted slowly toward the living room where Noah sat awake beneath the lamp. Like a compass needle finding north. Noah's heartbeat stumbled lightly. Ethan lowered himself onto the opposite end of the couch with sleepy slow movements, still deeply asleep. Silence wrapped softly around the apartment while rain tapped against the windows beside them. Noah studied him carefully. The pattern clicked suddenly into place so fast it startled him. The balcony call. The family stress. The nights Ethan woke near the window afterward. The serial incident after the thunderstorm. Noah leaned back slowly against the couch cushions. You only sleepwalk when something is bothering you, he murmured quietly. Ethan made a soft sleepy sound but did not wake. Noah looked down at the scattered grading papers in his lap while realization settled heavier in his chest than expected. Every single episode had happened after Ethan felt overwhelmed. Lonely. Anxious. Cornered emotionally. And every time, somehow, Ethan unconsciously ended up wherever Noah happened to be. The thought should not have affected him this much. It absolutely should not have made warmth spread quietly through him anyway. Ethan shifted slightly beside him in his sleep. Then, without opening his eyes, he leaned unconsciously sideways until his shoulder rested lightly against Noah's arm. Noah froze instantly. The apartment went completely silent except for rain and distant traffic below the bakery windows. Ethan relaxed almost immediately after touching him, his breathing evening out softly like his body finally settled somewhere safe. Noah stared down at him with something dangerously close to tenderness pulling through his chest now. Oh, he whispered faintly to himself. Outside, lightning flashed pale silver across the city skyline. And for the first time since Ethan moved into the apartment, Noah realized this situation might stop feeling accidental much sooner than either of them were ready for. By Wednesday, the apartment had developed routines that felt suspiciously close to domestic. Ethan hated noticing them. Noah left sticky notes beside the coffee machine reminding Ethan to eat breakfast before client meetings. Ethan started buying extra strawberry jam because Noah liked it on toast even though he pretended otherwise. Gregory the fern remained emotionally unstable but now received regular sunlight from both of them like a shared custody arrangement. Portland drifted through another week of gray skies and unpredictable rain while spring slowly settled across the city in soft green patches. The bakery downstairs stayed crowded with students, office workers, and couples escaping the weather beneath warm yellow lights. Ethan tried very hard not to focus on that last category. Thursday evening arrived heavy with storm clouds. Dark rain rolled across downtown Portland just after sunset while thunder muttered softly beyond the skyline. Ethan returned home late from a frustrating client meeting, already exhausted enough to feel hollow around the edges. His phone battery sat at 3%. His inbox looked like emotional terrorism. And somewhere during the bus ride home he had accidentally listened to a sad acoustic song twice in a row, which honestly should have counted as a medical emergency. The apartment greeted him warmly anyway. Soft lamplight glowed through the living room while jazz drifted quietly from the kitchen radio. Noah stood near the stove stirring soup in an oversized gray sweatshirt, one sleeve pushed halfway to his elbows. Rain rattled against the windows behind him while steam curled lazily toward the ceiling. Ethan stopped in the doorway for one dangerous second too long. Home. The thought arrived suddenly and without permission. It unsettled him immediately. Noah glanced over his shoulder. "You look like your meeting tried to fight you." Ethan dropped his backpack onto the floor with a groan. "I survived entirely through spite and caffeine." Noah smiled softly. "Soup?" Ethan nodded tiredly before collapsing onto the couch face first. Outside, thunder cracked louder this time. The apartment lights flickered once. Then twice. Ethan lifted his head slowly. "If this building loses power, I am blaming the ghost footprints." Right on cue the lights died completely. Silence swallowed the apartment. Rain hammered harder against the windows while somewhere downstairs Mrs. Alvarez shouted dramatically, "Not again." Ethan sat upright immediately inside total darkness. "Okay." "Nope." Noah laughed quietly somewhere near the kitchen. "Relax. The backup flashlight is in the drawer." That is exactly what people in horror movies say before disappearing. Another crack of thunder rattled the windows. Noah finally found the flashlight and warm golden light spilled softly through the apartment, chasing shadows into corners. The sudden glow illuminated Noah standing barefoot in the kitchen holding the flashlight beneath his chin dramatically. "Welcome to your haunted apartment experience." Ethan snorted despite himself. "You are enjoying this way too much." Rain pounded steadily outside while the entire city block seemed swallowed by darkness. Across the street only a few emergency lights glimmered faintly through the storm. Noah opened the refrigerator with a sigh. "Well, we should probably eat everything before it goes bad." 20 minutes later they sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor surrounded by bakery leftovers, microwave soup, half-melted ice cream, and enough candles to summon several polite ghosts. The flashlight rested between them casting warm amber light upward across the cabinets while thunder rolled continuously outside. Somehow the apartment felt smaller in the dark. Softer too. The storm wrapped around the building in restless waves while rain streaked silver across blackened windows. Ethan held a spoonful of melted chocolate ice cream thoughtfully. "This might be the weirdest dinner I have ever had." Noah raised his own spoon. "You made orange juice cereal in your sleep last week." "That was not technically voluntary." Noah laughed quietly and the sound settled warmly into the space between them. For a while neither of them spoke. They simply listened to the storm and the distant sounds of Portland moving slowly through the blackout below. Sirens echoed faintly downtown. Somewhere nearby a dog barked once before going quiet again. Ethan leaned his head back lightly against the cabinet behind him. Candlelight flickered softly across Noah's face while shadows danced along the apartment walls. Dangerous atmosphere. Extremely dangerous atmosphere. Ethan focused aggressively on his soup. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said gently after a while. Ethan glanced up. "Depends." Noah studied him quietly in the candlelight. "Why do you always look like you are about to run away every time things get comfortable?" Ethan's chest tightened unexpectedly. The storm outside seemed louder suddenly. He looked down at the spoon in his hands. "That is a deeply rude question during a blackout." Noah smiled faintly. Still did not answer it. Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. Silence stretched between them while rain whispered against the windows. Then, before he could stop himself, Ethan spoke quietly into the dim apartment. "I think I just hate quiet." Apartments. Noah's expression softened immediately. Ethan stared at the melting ice cream container instead of him. "Growing up, our house was always loud," he admitted carefully. "My mom singing while cleaning." My brother yelling at video games. Somebody always awake somewhere. Thunder rolled softly outside. Ethan swallowed once. Then after college I lived alone for a while. His voice lowered slightly. I thought I would like it. Noah remained very still beside him. Ethan laughed once without humor. Turns out silence is kind of awful after a while. The confession settled quietly between them while candlelight flickered gold across the kitchen floor. Noah looked at him for one long second that felt strangely fragile. Then he said softly, "You know you do not have to pretend around me all the time, right?" Ethan's heartbeat stumbled hard enough to annoy him. He looked up automatically. Their eyes met across the candlelight and storm shadows. Outside, lightning flashed silver across the windows behind them. Then suddenly every light in the apartment surged back on at once. Ethan blinked hard against the brightness. The moment shattered instantly. Noah looked away first, standing slowly while rubbing one hand against the back of his neck. "Power is back," he said unnecessarily. Ethan nodded too quickly. "Right. Cool." But neither of them moved right away. And somewhere beneath the fading thunder and warm kitchen lights, Ethan realized with growing panic that the apartment no longer felt quiet when Noah was in it. The apartment felt too warm after the blackout conversation. Too close. Too aware of itself somehow. Ethan noticed it immediately the next morning while sunlight spilled pale gold across the kitchen counters and Noah stood beside the coffee machine humming softly under his breath like nothing had happened. Which honestly felt illegal. Ethan sat at the counter gripping his cereal spoon like emotional support equipment while his brain replayed every second from the night before with horrifying clarity. You do not have to pretend around me all the time. Absolutely not. No thank you. Ethan could not survive conversations like that regularly. Portland. Drifted quietly through another cool spring morning outside the apartment windows. Rainwater still shimmered across rooftops from the storm while weak sunlight fought through gray clouds above downtown. Somewhere below, Mrs. Alvarez argued lovingly with a bread supplier in rapid-fire Spanish. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and coffee again. Everything should have felt normal. Instead, Ethan felt like somebody had rearranged all the furniture inside his chest overnight. Noah slid a mug toward him calmly. You are staring at your cereal like it insulted your family. Ethan blinked too quickly. I am thinking. Dangerous hobby. Ethan narrowed his eyes while Noah smiled faintly into his own coffee. There it was again. Easy. Comfortable. The exact problem. Ethan stood abruptly before his nervous system could betray him further. Maybe I should spend more time at the studio for a while. The words left his mouth too casually. Like they had not been circling inside his head since 3 a.m. Noah looked up immediately. The studio? Ethan grabbed his hoodie from the back of the chair. Yeah. I can work there more instead of here. Noah's expression shifted almost invisibly. Just enough for Ethan to notice anyway. You hate working there late, Noah said carefully. True. Ethan's rented design studio downtown smelled permanently like dust and printer ink while the building's heating system sounded haunted after sunset. But at least haunted radiators did not accidentally make him emotionally attached to his roommate. Deadlines, Ethan lied weakly. Noah studied him quietly for one long second that felt far too observant. Then he nodded once. Okay. Somehow that felt worse than arguing would have. By evening, cold rain returned to Portland in soft silver waves. Downtown glowed beneath traffic lights and wet sidewalks while people hurried through intersections carrying umbrellas and paper coffee cups. Ethan sat alone inside his tiny rented studio staring blankly at unfinished design work while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The space looked sterile compared to the apartment now. Empty walls. Metal desk. One dying cactus beside the printer. Silence. Too much silence. He hated how quickly he noticed the difference. Around 8:30 his phone buzzed. Noah, Mrs. Alvarez made too many blueberry pastries again. Ethan stared at the message. Then at the silent room around him. Then back at the message. He typed 3 different replies before settling on, "Cool. Save one." Noah reacted with a thumbs up emoji. Which should not have disappointed Ethan as much as it did. Outside the studio windows, rain streaked endlessly across downtown Portland while distant train horns echoed faintly through the city. Ethan leaned back in his chair and groaned softly into both hands. "You are an idiot," he informed himself quietly. Unfortunately, he had no counter-argument. Back at the apartment, Noah sat alone at the kitchen table grading music quizzes while untouched tea cooled beside him. The apartment felt strangely larger tonight. Quieter in the wrong ways. Gregory the fern drooped dramatically near the window like he personally sensed emotional tension. Noah glanced toward the clock again. 9:15. Ethan normally wandered into the kitchen around this time looking exhausted and hungry while pretending not to steal bites off Noah's plate. Instead, the apartment remained still except for rain tapping softly against the windows. Mrs. Alvarez shuffled upstairs around 9:30 carrying leftover pastries wrapped carefully in paper. "Where is your tall, nervous boyfriend?" she asked immediately. Noah sighed tiredly. "Still not my boyfriend." She peered around the apartment suspiciously. "It feels lonely in here tonight." Noah opened his mouth automatically to disagree. Then stopped. Because annoyingly enough, she was right. After she left, Noah wandered into the living room carrying both mugs of tea anyway out of pure habit. He set Ethan's untouched mug beside the couch before realizing what he was doing. Silence settled softly around him. Rain blurred the city lights beyond the windows while jazz drifted quietly from the old radio near the kitchen. Noah sat down slowly on the couch and stared at the untouched tea beside him. The apartment felt off balance without Ethan in it. Like the rhythm of the place had shifted slightly. Wrong. He hated how much he noticed that too. Near midnight, Ethan finally returned upstairs exhausted and damp from the rain. The apartment glowed softly beneath warm lamplight while quiet music played somewhere near the kitchen. Ethan stepped inside expecting darkness. Instead, he found Noah asleep on the couch beneath a blanket with reading glasses crooked slightly across his face and an untouched second mug of tea resting cold on the coffee table beside him. Ethan stopped moving immediately. The apartment felt painfully soft around the edges in the late-night quiet. Rain whispered gently against the windows while Noah slept curled slightly toward the empty side of the couch like he had been waiting there longer than intended. Ethan's chest tightened unexpectedly. Slowly he stepped closer. The tea beside the couch had gone completely cold. Ethan stared at it for one long dangerous second before looking back down at Noah sleeping beneath the warm lamp glow. Something guilty twisted quietly through him. Then Noah stirred faintly against the couch cushions. Ethan froze instantly. Noah blinked sleepily up at him through messy blonde hair and exhaustion. Their eyes met across the quiet apartment. Noah's voice came rough with sleep when he murmured softly, "You came home." And for reasons Ethan absolutely could not explain yet, those 3 words hit harder than any confession possibly could. The words stayed with Ethan all night. You came home. Not you are back. Not finally. Home. Portland woke beneath pale cloudy skies the next morning while cold drizzle streaked softly across the apartment windows. Ethan barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes he kept replaying Noah's sleepy voice from the couch and the strange relief hidden inside it. Which was deeply inconvenient for everybody involved. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee and rain when Ethan wandered into the kitchen around 7:30 wearing sweatpants and emotional confusion. Noah had already left for school. A handwritten sticky note waited beside the coffee machine. There is blueberry yogurt in the fridge. Please stop surviving entirely on caffeine. Ethan stared at the note for a full 10 seconds. Before muttering, "This man is becoming a problem." Gregory the fern offered no useful advice. Outside, Portland moved slowly beneath gray skies and soft rain. Cars hissed across wet streets while people hurried beneath umbrellas toward buses and cafes. Ethan spent the morning pretending to work from the apartment again because apparently his attempt at emotional distancing had failed after exactly one day. Around noon he finally left for a client meeting downtown, pulling his hoodie tighter against the cold drizzle while Jazz drifted faintly upstairs from Mrs. Alvarez's bakery. "You look tired," Mrs. Alvarez announced immediately as he passed the counter downstairs. Ethan pointed vaguely toward life itself. "Existing is exhausting." She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Did you fight with your blonde one?" Ethan nearly walked directly into the pastry display. "My what?" "Your blonde one," she repeated calmly while arranging croissants. "The tall polite one who carries groceries for old women." Ethan rubbed both hands over his face. "We are roommates." "Meshem, why does nobody believe me when I say that?" Mrs. Alvarez smiled mysteriously. "Because lonely people do not usually look at roommates the way you two look at each other." Ethan froze. Completely. The bakery suddenly felt too warm. Too crowded. Mrs. Alvarez continued wrapping pastries like she had not casually launched a missile into his nervous system. Ethan escaped into the rain 3 seconds later before his soul physically left his body. By late afternoon the weather worsened again. Dark clouds rolled heavily above downtown Portland while cold wind rattled tree branches along the sidewalks. Ethan finished his meeting early and wandered through the city with nowhere particular to go. He passed bookstores. Tiny record shops. Coffee stands glowing warm against the rain. Everywhere he looked, couples sat together sharing drinks and umbrellas while Ethan aggressively avoided thinking about how naturally Noah fit beside him lately. Which was impossible. Because somehow Noah had quietly become part of every routine inside Ethan's life. Midnight tea. Jazz in the kitchen. Someone waiting upstairs when work ran late. The realization hit harder than expected. Ethan stopped beneath the awning of a bookstore and exhaled sharply into the cold air. "Oh no," he whispered to himself. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Noah unlocked the front door around 5:30 carrying grocery bags and damp sheet music. The apartment greeted him with silence. No terrible reality television playing from the couch. No half-finished design sketches scattered across the coffee table. No Ethan wandering into the kitchen asking dramatic questions like whether soup counted as emotional support. Noah set the grocery bags onto the counter slowly. The apartment felt wrong again. Too still. He hated how quickly he noticed Ethan's absence now. Rain tapped steadily against the windows while weak evening light faded across the living room floor. Noah unpacked groceries automatically before pausing halfway through. 2 blueberry pastries sat inside the bakery box downstairs. He stared at them quietly for a moment. Then sighed. Without thinking, Noah placed 1 pastry onto a plate beside Ethan's usual spot at the counter. His movements slowed immediately afterward as realization settled over him. He had done it automatically. Like Ethan being there later was already expected. The apartment lights glowed warm around him while thunder rumbled faintly somewhere over the river. Noah leaned both hands against the kitchen counter and laughed softly under his breath. "The apartment feels weird without your random midnight snacks," he murmured quietly into the empty room. The words surprised him with how true they felt. Around 8 that evening, Ethan finally returned upstairs soaked from the rain and emotionally exhausted from fighting his own thoughts all afternoon. He stepped inside expecting darkness again. Instead, warm lamplight filled the apartment while Jazz drifted softly from the kitchen radio. Noah sat cross-legged on the couch grading papers with 1 sock half falling off his foot. The sight hit Ethan right in the chest before he could prepare for it. Noah looked up immediately when the door opened. Relief crossed his face so fast Ethan almost missed it. Almost. "Hey," Noah said softly. Ethan swallowed. "Once." "Hey." Silence stretched gently between them while rain whispered outside the windows. Then Ethan noticed the plate waiting on the counter. Blueberry pastry. Still untouched. Beside it sat a mug turned upside down waiting to be filled with tea. Like somebody had expected him home after all. Ethan looked back toward Noah automatically. Noah immediately pretended to focus very hard on the papers in his lap. Ethan's chest tightened painfully around something warm this time. something terrifyingly close to belonging. Then the apartment lights flickered once overhead. Both of them looked up instinctively. And somewhere deep in the hallway, faint footsteps creaked softly across the old hardwood floor even though neither of them had moved. Saturday evening arrived wrapped in silver winter air and glowing city lights. Portland's annual winter festival transformed downtown into something soft and almost unreal. Strings of warm golden lights hung above crowded sidewalks while vendors sold hot chocolate, roasted almonds, and handmade scarves beneath rows of white tents. Music drifted lazily through the cold evening air while people moved through the festival bundled in oversized coats and scarves. Ethan stood in front of the apartment mirror for nearly 10 straight minutes trying to understand why his heartbeat felt illegal. "It is literally just a festival," he muttered to himself while adjusting his jacket for the fourth time. Gregory the Fern remained emotionally unsupportive. Behind him Noah leaned casually against the hallway wall already dressed in a dark wool coat with his hands tucked into his pockets. "You know the festival does not have a dress code, right?" Ethan turned immediately defensive. "I am aware." Noah's mouth twitched faintly. "You changed sweaters 3 times. Ethan froze. "How do you know that?" "The rejected sweaters are all on your bed." Ethan glanced toward his bedroom. Traitorous evidence everywhere. Noah laughed softly under his breath before tossing Ethan a knitted scarf from the coat rack. Ethan caught it automatically. "It is cold outside," Noah said simply. The scarf smelled faintly like cedar and laundry detergent. Which, unfortunately, felt weirdly comforting. Downtown Portland glowed beneath pale winter skies as they walked through crowded streets toward the festival together. Cold air painted their breath silver while Christmas lights reflected across damp sidewalks from earlier rain. Around them families laughed beneath glowing lanterns while couples wandered between food stalls sharing paper cups of cider. Ethan shoved both hands deeper into his pockets immediately. Dangerous environment. Extremely dangerous environment. This was a mistake, he muttered quietly. Noah glanced sideways at him. "The festival?" "Feelings," Ethan answered before his brain could stop him. Noah nearly choked laughing. Ethan stared straight ahead in horror. "Forget I said that." "Absolutely not." They drifted slowly through the crowded winter market while soft live music echoed somewhere near the riverfront stage. Noah stopped occasionally to admire handmade ornaments or ridiculous knitted hats while Ethan followed beside him pretending not to enjoy any of this. Which became difficult around the giant outdoor ice rink glowing beneath hanging lights. "You skate?" Noah asked. Ethan looked offended immediately. "No. I enjoy having functional bones." Noah smiled warmly. "Coward." "Correct." Nearby, Mrs. Alvarez somehow appeared out of nowhere carrying a paper tray of hot chocolate like an elderly holiday spirit. "There you boys are." Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Do you secretly live everywhere?" "Good lighting and gossip," she answered proudly before handing both of them hot chocolate cups. Then her eyes narrowed suspiciously between them. "You are standing closer tonight." Ethan immediately stepped sideways so fast he almost walked into a decorative wreath display. Noah calmly accepted his hot chocolate while Mrs. Alvarez watched them with the satisfaction of a woman observing her favorite television drama unfold live. "Have fun at your date," she announced before disappearing back into the crowd. Ethan stared after her in exhausted disbelief. "One day she is going to legally marry us by accident." Noah laughed softly beside him and the sound settled warmly against the cold winter air. The festival grew busier as night deepened. Strings of lights glowed overhead while snow began falling lightly across the city for the first time all season. Tiny white flakes drifted through Noah's hair and caught against Ethan's scarf while the crowd moved slowly around them beneath music and laughter. Somewhere near the center plaza a brass band started playing holiday songs badly but enthusiastically. Ethan found himself smiling despite every emotional defense mechanism he possessed. Then Noah suddenly stopped walking. Ethan nearly bumped into him. "What?" Ethan asked. Noah looked at him carefully beneath the glowing festival lights. Snow drifted softly between them while distant music echoed through the crowded street. "You know," Noah said gently, "you stopped correcting people tonight." Ethan blinked once. His stomach dropped instantly. Noah nodded subtly toward a nearby vendor booth where an older woman had just smiled at both of them and said, "You two make a cute couple," while handing over roasted chestnuts 5 minutes earlier. Ethan realized with immediate horror that he had not argued, had not panicked, had not launched into his usual nervous explanation about roommates and assumptions and absolutely being straight. He had simply accepted the chestnuts and kept walking beside Noah like it felt normal. The realization hit harder than expected. Ethan looked away quickly toward the glowing crowd around them. Snow continued falling gently across Portland while warm lights blurred softly against the dark winter sky. "I guess I got tired," he muttered weakly. Noah studied him quietly but did not push, which somehow made Ethan's chest ache worse. They continued walking afterward in softer silence. Comfortable silence. Dangerous silence. The festival streets grew more crowded near the waterfront stage where hundreds of people gathered beneath hanging lights and drifting snow. Ethan lost sight of Noah for exactly half a second after someone carrying balloons stepped between them. Panic hit him instantly and irrationally. Then without thinking, Ethan reached out and grabbed the sleeve of Noah's coat before the crowd could separate them further. Warm wool beneath cold fingers. Noah looked back immediately. Ethan froze. The noise of the festival blurred strangely around them while snow drifted softly through golden light overhead. Ethan slowly realized he was still holding Noah's sleeve. His heartbeat stumbled hard against his ribs. Noah looked down briefly at Ethan's hand before lifting his eyes again. Something quiet shifted across his expression. Not surprise. Something softer. Something far more dangerous. Ethan opened his mouth to invent an excuse immediately. But before he could speak, fireworks suddenly exploded above the river in bright silver light, illuminating the entire winter festival sky while the crowd cheered around them. And for one suspended heartbeat beneath falling snow and reflected fireworks, Ethan forgot to let go. After the winter festival, something shifted quietly between them. Not dramatically. Not officially. Just enough that Ethan noticed himself pausing in doorways longer than before whenever Noah smiled at him. Enough that Noah stopped pretending not to notice whenever Ethan unconsciously drifted closer beside him in crowded places. Portland settled deeper into winter afterward. Rain returned in soft silver waves across the city while cold wind rattled against apartment windows at night. The bakery downstairs smelled permanently like cinnamon and pine garlands now. Mrs. Alvarez played old holiday jazz records loud enough for the entire building to hear. Ethan secretly liked it. He denied this whenever asked directly. Sunday evening arrived quiet and cold. The apartment glowed softly beneath warm kitchen lights while snow drifted lazily outside for the second time that month. Noah sat on the couch grading school concert forms while Ethan worked half-heartedly on logo revisions beside him, with Gregory the Fern balanced dramatically near the window like an emotional witness. The television played low holiday movies neither of them were actually watching. It should have felt normal. Instead, the apartment carried that same strange fragile tension that had followed them home from the festival all week. The kind built from almost moments and unfinished thoughts. Ethan noticed every small thing now. Noah's knee brushing lightly against his under the shared blanket. The sleepy rasp in Noah's voice after midnight. The way Noah automatically handed him the better side of toasted bread every morning without thinking about it. Dangerous details. Extremely dangerous details. Around 11:30, Ethan's phone buzzed sharply beside him. His older brother. Ethan's stomach tightened instantly. Noah glanced over briefly before looking back down at his paperwork. "You okay?" Ethan forced a quick nod. "Yeah." Another lie. He stood quietly and stepped onto the apartment balcony to answer. Cold winter air wrapped around him immediately while snow drifted softly through glowing city lights below. Portland looked peaceful from up here. Quiet rooftops. Blurred headlights. Steam curling from bakery vents into the freezing night air. Hey, Ethan answered carefully. His brother sounded exhausted immediately. Mom is worried about you again. Ethan leaned against the balcony railing with a sigh. That woman worries professionally. You have barely been home in months. Ethan stared down at the snowy street below. I have work. You always say that. Silence stretched heavily between them. Then his brother spoke again, softer this time. You sound different lately. Ethan frowned slightly. Different how? Less lonely. Ethan's chest tightened immediately. Inside the apartment, Noah laughed quietly at something on television and the sound drifted faintly through the balcony door behind him. Home. The dangerous word returned instantly. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. I should go, he murmured. Ethan. His brother hesitated. Whoever is making you stay in Portland this long, another pause. I hope they are worth it. The line disconnected before Ethan could answer. Snow continued falling softly around him while distant city traffic hummed below. Ethan remained motionless on the balcony for several long seconds afterward. Then slowly he stepped back inside the apartment. Warmth greeted him immediately. Jazz drifted quietly from the kitchen radio while yellow light spilled across the living room floor. Noah looked up from the couch the second Ethan returned inside. Everything okay? Ethan opened his mouth automatically to lie again. But exhaustion caught up first. Emotional exhaustion. The kind built from months of pretending not to understand his own feelings. I do not know, he admitted quietly. Noah's expression softened immediately. Neither of them spoke after that. The apartment settled into late-night stillness around them while snow tapped gently against the windows. Eventually Noah drifted off asleep on the couch beneath the blanket with paperwork sliding sideways across his lap. Ethan remained awake longer beside him, pretending to work while secretly watching snow fall across Portland outside the windows. Around 2 in the morning, exhaustion finally pulled him under too. The apartment fell silent except for distant traffic and soft winter wind against the old building. Then sometime later Noah stirred faintly awake again. Darkness wrapped softly around the apartment while streetlights painted pale silver shadows across the living room floor. The television had long since shut itself off automatically. Noah blinked sleepily toward the couch beside him. Ethan was gone. Noah sat up slightly. Then he spotted movement near the hallway. Ethan wandered slowly through the apartment, half asleep again, oversized sweatshirt hanging crookedly from one shoulder while snowlight reflected softly across the hardwood floor beneath his feet. Sleepwalking. Noah watched quietly as Ethan drifted toward the living room without opening his eyes. This time there was no confusion in Noah's chest anymore. No surprise. Just something painfully gentle. Ethan lowered himself slowly onto the couch beside him again with sleepy automatic movements like his body already knew exactly where safety lived now. Noah's heartbeat softened painfully inside his ribs. Ethan shifted closer unconsciously beneath the blanket until his shoulder brushed lightly against Noah's arm. Warmth spread immediately through the quiet darkness. Then, still half asleep, Ethan mumbled softly into the silence, "You make this place feel less lonely." Noah stopped breathing for one suspended heartbeat. Snow drifted quietly outside while the city glowed pale beyond the apartment windows. Ethan remained asleep beside him, breathing slow and peaceful against the couch cushions like he had no idea what he just said. Noah stared at him in complete stunned silence before something fragile and terrified and hopeful all tangled together inside his chest at once. Carefully, slowly, Noah reached down and pulled the blanket higher around Ethan's shoulders. His fingers brushed lightly against Ethan's sleeve again. This time Ethan leaned unconsciously toward the touch instead of away from it. Noah's chest ached. He stayed there beside him for the rest of the night while snow continued falling softly across Portland outside. And somewhere between the quiet apartment walls and the fading winter storm, Noah realized he had already crossed the line from caring about Ethan into something far more dangerous. Winter slowly melted into spring after that night. Portland traded snow for soft rain and pale blue mornings while tiny green leaves returned to the trees lining downtown sidewalks. The apartment above Marigold Bakery changed too, though neither Ethan nor Noah said it out loud at first. Some things simply settled naturally into place. Ethan stopped pretending he hated jazz in the mornings. Noah stopped acting surprised whenever Ethan wandered half asleep into the kitchen and stole pieces of toast directly off his plate. Gregory the fern remained unstable but emotionally resilient. Most importantly, the sleepwalking slowly stopped. Not all at once. Just little by little. The hallway footsteps disappeared. The midnight serial crimes ended. Ethan stopped waking near the window wrapped in blankets he did not remember carrying there. Somewhere along the way, the apartment itself stopped feeling lonely enough to wander through unconsciously at night. April arrived warm and bright across Portland. Sunlight finally lingered longer through the bakery windows while people filled outdoor cafe tables again beneath hanging flower baskets and soft spring wind. One Saturday morning Ethan stood beside the apartment window holding an envelope in both hands like it contained emotional explosives. Noah looked up immediately from watering Gregory beside the sink. "You have been staring at that paper for 10 minutes. Ethan glanced down at the envelope again. Apartment lease renewal. Another year in apartment 4B. His heartbeat felt strangely loud. Noah set the watering can down slowly. "You do not have to decide immediately," he said gently. Ethan looked toward him automatically. Warm sunlight spilled across the kitchen between them while soft jazz drifted upstairs from the bakery below. Everything about the apartment suddenly felt painfully familiar now. The crooked hallway floorboard. The smell of coffee every morning. Noah humming quietly while cooking dinner. Home. That dangerous word again. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he murmured. "I know." But the truth settled quietly inside him already. The thought of leaving this apartment felt wrong now. Worse than wrong. Empty. Later that afternoon Mrs. Alvarez somehow recruited both of them into repainting the tiny apartment balcony because apparently retirement had transformed her into a tiny cheerful dictator. Warm spring air drifted through downtown Portland while sunlight glowed soft and gold across rooftops. The balcony overlooked the street below where people wandered between bookstores and cafes carrying flowers and iced coffee beneath clear skies. Ethan sat cross-legged on the balcony floor wearing old jeans with blue paint smudged across one sleeve while Noah balanced dangerously on a ladder repainting the upper railing. "This feels unsafe," Ethan announced. Noah looked down calmly. "You are sitting on the paint tray." Ethan looked down in horror. "Oh, come on." Noah laughed so hard he nearly dropped the paintbrush. The sound wrapped warmly through the bright afternoon air while Ethan glared at him without any real irritation left behind it anymore. Down below Mrs. Alvarez leaned halfway out the bakery window holding fresh lemonade. "You boys are adorable," she shouted proudly to passing pedestrians. Ethan opened his mouth automatically. Then stopped. No one noticed immediately. A slow smile tugged carefully at the corner of his mouth. Ethan pointed the paint roller toward him defensively. "Do not start." "I did not say anything." "Your face said something." Noah climbed down from the ladder slowly while sunlight caught warm gold through his hair. "You know," he said casually, "you really stopped correcting people." Ethan stared at him across the tiny balcony while spring wind moved softly through the city around them. Cars rolled lazily through downtown streets below. Somewhere nearby someone played guitar badly on a sidewalk corner. The world felt warm and strangely still for one suspended moment. Noah leaned lightly against the balcony railing beside him. "So," he asked gently, nodding toward the lease envelope sitting on the table near the balcony door. "Roommates again next year?" Ethan looked toward the envelope. Then back toward the apartment behind them. Their apartment. Warm kitchen light. Half-finished coffee mugs. Noah's music books stacked beside Ethan's design sketches. All the tiny ordinary pieces of a life they had accidentally built together. Ethan's chest tightened softly around something no longer frightening this time. Just real. He smiled before he could stop himself. Small. Honest. "Yeah," he said quietly. Then after one brief nervous heartbeat he added, "I think I would like to stay here a little longer." Noah's expression softened instantly. Something warm and relieved flickered quietly behind his eyes before he looked away toward the city skyline. Ethan watched him carefully for 1 second too long. Then Noah reached for the paintbrush again and held it toward him. "You missed a spot." Ethan snorted softly and bumped his shoulder lightly against Noah's as he took the brush. The contact lasted barely half a second. Neither of them moved away afterward. Below them, Portland drifted through warm spring sunlight while jazz floated upstairs from the bakery windows and fresh paint dried slowly across the balcony railing. And for the first time since Ethan moved into apartment 4B carrying 3 plants and 1 frying pan through the rain, neither of them felt lonely anymore.